Welcome to Cheers and Chow, where we explore how people cook, eat, and gather. This podcast is all about the stories, experiences, and connections that happen around food, whether it's in the kitchen, at the table, or beyond. I'm your host, Coco, and today's guest is someone I have had the absolute pleasure of knowing for the past 2 years. We first bonded over an amazing brunch at Kobe's, and since then, we've been co-leading Ladies That UX here in LA. She's not only a brilliant mind, but a mission-driven UX researcher, strategist, and learning development novice. When it comes to food, she describes her cooking experience as ancestral passion into the current, which I can't wait to unpack. Nicole, welcome to Cheers and Chow. To kick us off, maybe share what ancestral passion into the current means to you when it comes to how you cook and experience food.
Thank you so much, Coco. I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for having me. Well, you said 2 words. Of course, I used 4 or 5 to describe myself, which says a lot about my cooking and my personality. I would say ancestral passion into the current is because I personally take most of all the dishes I've made and make from my ancestral background. So I'm half Sicilian on my father's side, French on my mother's side, which is all about food and connections I feel with those cultures. I've been blessed to have it in my blood. I take a lot of old dishes that I've learned through both sides and modernize them in a certain way, but I always give thanks to who it is that I'm cooking from.
Wow, that's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing with us. Diving into your cooking style and your influences, are there any family traditions, techniques, or ingredients that have shaped the way you cook today?
Yes. As far as techniques go, I would say it's like the opposite of a technique, which is what my mother's well known for. She's amazing at cooking. I actually didn't realize it till I got much older. Just as I assumed this was just how every mother cooks until I would have people having outside the family have her food and they were like, oh, she's really amazing. She's really good. And I started really paying attention. But the non-technique of what I've learned from her is not giving me exact ingredients and directions. So she'll just say like a pinch of this, this, make sure it's like this. And I'll be like, okay, is it 1/4 cup, mom? Is it this? Just, I don't know, just feel it out. Over a lot of mistakes and times of her, I felt like sabotaging me to move forward with these recipes. And they're all like handed down from her mom, her great aunt, actually. I could get into that later, but she basically has these amazing ingredients, but I don't like know a pinch of this and pinch of that, what that means. So in that sense, I've actually had to learn very intuitively how to cook and how to feel it. When it's a newer dish, I'm not as obviously good at the intuitive part, but all these other dishes that I make on a regular basis that are based on like my heritage, my lineage, ancestral background, they definitely are all mixed with things. I also modernize certain ingredients. Like I have a very healthy husband. We try to go healthy forward. I keep that in mind as well because there are some Sicilian, Italian, and French dishes that are not always the healthiest. I don't lose the integrity, but I do try to sometimes opt for certain other ingredients. But I would say like as far as techniques, and then on my dad's side, the same thing, Italian side, my grandmother didn't really write down any of her ingredients. This is all oral tradition. So I get things from my aunt and they're not always accurate. So I just kind of have to make up what I feel and what I remember it tasting.
Oh, I love that. Something I actually want to expand on is this idea around cooking with intuition. And you mentioned a pinch of this, a pinch of that. We have very similar cooking styles. Most of the things I make, unless I'm making something completely new, then I will try to follow everything down to a T. But for the most part, it is just like going with intuition and what feels right. I'm curious from your perspective, like, even though you're going off of intuition and what feels right, like, how did you know when to make those adjustments? What was your process behind that?
Good question. Let's see. I think by maybe always enjoying food and paying attention to food and taste. Mainly taste. I've always really been a picky eater all my life. And I used to think it was a negative thing, right, to be picky. And then the older I got, I realized, no, I'm just really selective. I find that to be actually great to have that, to be able to decipher what tastes good and not just everything tastes good and why doesn't it taste good. So I think on that note, maybe again, it would be a little bit where it goes into intuitive thinking, what type of ingredient, what I know to bring in and what not to bring in really comes into what I think would taste better or what I would like or whoever I'm cooking for, right? I would say just by really understanding as much as I can without me sounding super snooty about taste. But for me to be very intrigued and interested in taste, I think helped like decipher which ingredients of how I would intuitively pick this if I don't know the actual measurement. I don't think I've ever in my life have looked at one recipe and followed it. Like I've always had 3 or 4 recipes because I'll like something of some other recipe and they'll be, let me see if I can add this instead. So I'll find recipes and blend them all together. This is why I don't bake because baking is so exact for me. I can't stick to one thing. I'm like, that's not for me.
You are actually touching on something that I've learned as well here in the kitchen. If it's just like cooking back here on the stove, in the oven, whatever, I can get experimental. I can test different things. I don't have to really like stick to a recipe or follow a guide. But when it comes to baking, oh my gosh, like as much as I want to stray from just doing whatever feels right, like it's not the same. And I've had to just learn that by trial and error. I don't bake as much, but I do know when it comes to baking, like I can't mess around. Like it would be in my best interest to just do as they say.
Yeah, there's very little room, right? There can be, right? The good news for me, also this goes into taste, is I've never been a sweet tooth person ever. I've always been more savory. I don't actually like sweets, and even as a kid, I would prefer veggies over candy. I did not like candy at all. It's weird. There were like, but again, I was picky. I had 2 different candies, and if you put them in front of me, I'd eat like the whole bag of them. Red Vines was one. But so I feel like there's certain sweetnesses, but to me, baking usually leads to like more of a sweeter. I've just also, I feel like myself lucky in that my skill set has not been in baking and also my taste has not been in baking. So therefore, I'm fine just making savory dishes for like dinners and like on stoves and in ovens that are like I can add whatever to it, enhances it as opposed to ruin it.
Honestly, I'm like, wow, because I am the direct opposite. I definitely have a sweet tooth. During the holidays, I was like, I'm gonna just try to make the perfect cookie. And so that had me baking like every week. And I did end up making a really good sugar cookie, but I had to stop. You go buy a bag of sugar and it's like this much of sugar. And then like I look and I'm like, wow, the sugar is low. Is that normal? Like I don't think the sugar should be low like that. So I actually haven't made cookies since. So yeah, I think it's pretty nice. That's not an issue for you.
I will say that with all that, I do love cookies. So I am a very big cookie lover. If I bake, that's the other thing. Then you bake 12 of them or 15 or whatever. And I'm like, I just need one. I don't need 12. Yeah. I guess you give them neighbors and friends. So it's good. Yeah. Or eat them. But yeah, I love that. No, I think also though, too, I probably inherently know I'm bad at baking. My body, like, you don't need to eat anything. Literally takes a science of someone who can just really read directions very well, measure very well. None of these things I can do. Like, okay, let's just throw it together. I know we have an interest in fashion. I wanted to be a designer who just drapes stuff or threw stuff together, mainly a stylist, because I was like, I don't want to like sew. I don't want to do all the measurements. I don't want to that.
This actually relates to your other profession as a researcher. Do you think that research plays a role in how you cook, whether that's through learning from your elders or exploring ingredients, trying new methods? Talk to us about what your process looks like when you are trying to cook maybe something new.
That's a good question, too. I would say to an extent of not where I'm researching so much the dish itself. I will research the culture that I'm trying to make a dish for, which I have not accomplished as perfectly as I would like, but they still come out okay, is combining French herbs and French dish like with Indian dishes. So the one cuisine I can't do because I literally would have to do a lot of research, I'd have to have a lot of time to do this, is I've always wanted to learn how to cook homemade Indian food. I studied Indian classical dance for 8.5 years, became really close to the culture, and And so I would go to my guru, which just means teacher's house, and she would make me all the time. And I remember just like the exquisite amounts of like insane spices blended together perfectly. And I was like, I can't even, I would have to take like a whole class for this, right? I'd have to go and actually learn. I always thought. So it's something I haven't quite gotten down yet, but I have spices from there that I like a lot, and I'll blend them with or like some other fun like French dishes. So I'd say like research in the sense of like the cultures that I'm interested in, the areas in France compared to the areas in India, like
Yeah.
and blending those together. I would say my interest in general of various cultures and then blending the best of them. And I would say the research would be more in the action of me experimenting with the different spices.
I love the idea of trying these fusion cuisines, taking flavors from different countries or areas, bringing them together to just create something new. And one I haven't even thought about is actually Indian and French cuisine. It makes me curious, where did that inspiration even come from? Just what do these two flavor profiles look like coming together?
Two things that it came from. One, I studied in Paris for a little while and I got excited that I saw Indian restaurant. This is when I was still dancing Indian classical dance at the time. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Everything smelled like Indian food. It just all the senses that I was used to. And then I sat down to eat and I was really excited. Looked like Indian food, smelled like Indian food, and then it didn't taste at all like Indian food. It tasted like French food, which like threw me off. And then I told my mom, she goes, typically, this is again a generalization, a lot of French people don't like spicy food. So they probably miled it down. It was weird. It didn't even taste like a mild Indian version, but it smelled like there were Indian spices. So that was one area where it was the first time where I thought, can they blend together? And then interesting, in talking about two of my favorite spices, one is very French and one is very Indian, or I should say Southeast Asian to be correct. But in French, meaning they use it a lot in egg dishes, nutmeg is a hidden spice. I feel that my mom puts in stuff that everyone's, what is it? I'm like, it's a nutmeg. If you don't know what it is, it's going to be nutmeg. And then other is garam masala, which is like one of my favorite spices of all times. They're very connected. They're very warm. They're really like cinnamon-ish, right? And so I think because there's an earthiness to them, but they're both different cultures. And then even with like rosemary, and I'm on the French side, like again, it's like earthier, right? Where you have like spicier earthiness from India. I just always thought the two for me would be like amazing. I've tried to make some dishes, like I said, some turn out okay, and others just need to go back and research some more about this. Yeah.
I think one of the things I love about your experience with this is it's very rooted in the culture, your experience based on studying dance in India and traveling to Paris. All to say, I have this book, The Science of Spice, and it's meant to teach me more about these spices and where they come from and how these different flavor profiles can work together. So I love the fact that this is just something that you're thinking about. Are there any other flavor profiles or combinations that you also really like?
There's some that I haven't actually yet explored that I'm very interested in, but feel like I'd have to go. And this might be an excuse because I want to go to this country. And I'm trying to tell myself this is why. I mean, there are many reasons why, but my father's family's from Sicily. A lot of people think Sicilian food's Italian food. It's not. They were taken over by many cultures. In fact, they actually have probably one of the most variations of like being conquered by so many people by the Viking. You'll find like a 6'3" redhead Sicilian because they're conquered by the Vikings and they were conquered for a while. So there'll be redhead Sicilians. My father looks very Arab. They were conquered by North Africa many times. And so like the Moors came in and they conquered and took over. There's a lot of Arab influences, North African influences, Viking influences. So to me, it's been very fascinating and I've never been, but I do know also they tend to have a spicier than what people are actually used to with Italian dishes. They eat a lot of eel. They're by the water. There's all these dishes. I've heard my grandmother used to make some of these, but some of them got washed away over the years when she moved to New York. So I'd love to explore those spices that come from that area and then almost mix them even with maybe a Mexican flavor. My mother's Mexican and Greek. So my aunt is actually a very amazing chef cuisine. Like she studied it for a while. Makes amazing traditional Mexican and Greek dishes and Arabic. She married a Saudi. So she has like a whole huge palette. Maybe that's where also I'm influenced by her. I come from Southern California too, so there's a lot of Mexican influences there. Sicilian with the spices I know, just I feel like there could be a lot there too. Something to research.
Feel free to let me know. I'd love to have a plate.
Be the tester, right?
Exactly. I know something else that creates a really special bond between the both of us is we're really tapped into this intuitive nature, this mindfulness aspect of just how we live. I want to connect the dots and also think about just like how does being mindful show up in the way that you eat and experience food?
I love this question because to me, I would say I think about it a lot. An example of this would be like if I have time to cook like this, is put music on. And then I think of the dish I'm making. If it's something of a family dish, then I thank the ancestor who created it. And then I actually always, if it's a big dish I'm making for me and my husband, even if it's like a big soup that's just something that takes a long time in preparation, I say a prayer to a recent person of passing. So whether it's like his father-in-law who loved to cook, passed away 3 years ago, or if it's like a grandparent that passed away years and years ago, I try to remember people who've passed, even if they didn't have anything to do with cooking. Just I feel like it's a moment to, reach out. So I feel like in that kind of mindfulness, but then also with emotions. I've made food where I've been angry or upset, get mad if it messes up my food. Like I'll actually stop cooking. I'll stop whatever I'm doing if it's possible and go back when I've actually become a little bit like calmer or if I'm like in a better mindset or because I actually feel like the energy goes into the food. I always want positive energy as much, or even if it's sad, just something a little bit grounded.
I am actually so glad that you touched on that aspect. This was actually something that I learned from my partner. And this was before we moved to California. There were moments where, let's say I'm making dinner, I've been angry, or maybe we just had a disagreement or something like that, and I would cook. And then he would make comments about how just the food just doesn't taste the same. Aside from just getting like offended, because it's like, what are you trying to say? But he would tell me, like, when I know like you're not in your normal state and like you make something, like I can tell that it tastes different. And I was like, that's so deep. And I also noticed too, I started to just be more aware of when I was in a different emotional state. And let's just say I'm anxious or I'm stressed and I'm trying to make something, like soon as you start hearing like things falling everywhere or I'm spilling or food's coming out of the pot, like it's a sign that I am not calm. I'm so happy that you said that because I don't feel alone. Thank you so much for sharing that. It took me a while to just understand what that meant. And I started to just recognize it myself too. Oh, like I made something, I wasn't in the best state I could have been in to make this. And even when I'm eating it, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, exactly. You could taste the difference. I don't have kids, so when my nieces come over and visit, like I make them food all the time, and I definitely have to concentrate more on being very just mindful of positive energy because I always think they're little and they're kids. I don't even let my husband get in the kitchen if I'm making for them. Not that he's a negative space, but I like in my own zone so I can really dedicate like a positive energy just to them only because they're so precious as like little kids. I remember he had some guy friends over. I went into this whole zone of trying to get like positive for his dinner party that he was having that I was hosting, but was really for him and his friends. And even then, I'll try to really focus on this mindfulness because, yeah, I feel like you can eat the food and taste the anger or the upsetness, or you can taste the anxiety. So I feel like it's interesting how that works as far as food tasting.
Yeah, if we're following the principles of energy, it does transfer. So
Right.
by law, it's making sense. But on the flip side, I do appreciate those moments where I am making something and there's been so much intention behind it. Like you said, putting on some music, or me, I love to have a nice glass of wine while I'm cooking. And when I curate those moments, the end result is always worth it. I'm so glad that it actually took me 2 hours just to make this pasta, even though it probably could have taken me 30 minutes or an hour, but I'm glad I took the time I needed to because it tastes amazing.
My favorite way of cooking is just having no time slot, having it be something when I feel like cooking. I feel like it's really something that I want to share. It's something I want to try. Maybe I'm trying something a little new with some recipe I've worked with before. But yeah, I love that. Just having the music, a glass of wine, and just feeling this like cooking energy for me, it's a very therapeutic session. I'm just left alone in the kitchen. I can be there for hours in happiness.
See, that's beautiful. And you know what? This is making me actually want to invite you to the kitchen and we
Mm.
cook something together.
Ooh, that'd be awesome. I'm in for sure.
Speaking of food and things that bring you joy, do you have a particular go to food or snack that just always brings you joy? You could be in the zone and a thought pops in, and you're just like, having this right now would just be great. I would love to have this thing right now. What would that be for you?
Yeah, my go-to comforty kind of is yogurt. I love grass-fed dairy and stuff and everything else, but I can't find a good one. I've tried everything. So I use Fabergé's yogurt because its thickness is perfect, and frozen mini wild organic blueberries. They have to be very small. When people think of like dessert, that's actually a dessert to me. Like I'll have it in the morning, but I'll also have it sometimes in the evening. It's like my beginning piece and my end piece.
What about it? What about the yogurt and the blueberries that just makes you feel really good?
It's just very comforting to me. I just have to remind myself not to do it before a meeting because my teeth and mouth turn purple. Other than that, it's so comforting to me. It's simple, it's easy when I'm super busy. I also feel like it's also cheating. Like for some reason, I always feel like, are we sure this is good for you? Because it tastes like a dessert to me. I don't have a very big sweet tooth, but to me, that's like the perfect dessert. That's like when people grab a piece of cake or something, that would be like my go-to would be the yogurt and frozen blueberries.
See, again, why being more savory works in your favor because me, I wouldn't be thinking about a healthy snack like that. Me wants to grab a Tony chocolate bar and call it a day.
Those are good too. Don't get me wrong.
I'm actually late to the Tony's chocolate bar game,
Mm.
like very late. It's funny because my friend in Texas, she would have them in her house, but I never had any. And I was at Whole Foods 2 months ago and they had them on sale. And I was like, let me just try it. And just changed my life. There's one right now in the pantry. I have to put it away just so I don't get tempted. But then, of course, like once I open it, like it's a wrap, like it's gone.
Those are good. I'm actually not a huge chocolate fan. My husband loves dark chocolate, and I do like dark chocolate. I know it's like better for you, but I grew up on milk chocolate. So, time if there's like milk chocolate at all anywhere, I do have a weakness for it, I will say. But yeah, Tony's is like phenomenal.
It's just really good. Tony's, if you're listening to this,
Exactly.
we'd love some. So, Nicole, we talked a lot about like culture and history, and I actually really admire this aspect about you, especially as it relates to food and how you cook and what you eat. Earlier, you mentioned some very specific ingredients like herbs de Provence, Indian flavors and spices. Are there any specific meals or ingredients that ground you in a sense of culture or history?
Yes, pasta. That's my downfall. Yes, my weakness. I would say probably one of the most comforting meals I can make myself or someone make for me. Pasta. My father and I have talked about how we could have pasta every single day and how different pastas taste differently. Where my mother could not have pasta every day and does not believe that the pasta cut changes the flavor of the pasta, which we think is crazy. She also cuts her pasta, which we think is a travesty. So we're like, yeah, there's a lot of strict rules about pasta and pasta liking. I would say that would be like my go-to. My heaven of heaven foods would be pasta all the time. It's funny, I don't eat it as much as one would think if I liked it, but I think it's also what happens when you like something, at least me, I get very picky of how it's made. I will never brag about anything else in the kitchen, but I will say I have perfected pasta that's not handmade or anything of that sort and make it seem like it's handmade pasta. So
Really?
yeah, it's not always accurate, but I have done it where even my father-in-law thought I had bought fresh pasta one time and I'm like, nope, it's in a box. And he was like, what? And he was pretty picky with pasta too. It grounds me. It makes me feel really solid, happy, grounded. I feel close to my grandma on my dad's side, who is my favorite grandma. No offense to my mom's mom. She definitely was this magical person in my life with food, people around a table and communing. And I have such fond memories of her and her pasta dishes. I don't even know how to come close to making them.
Not to pry into your pasta secrets, I'm totally curious because I'll say this. I typically buy box pasta. I feel like I don't have the right tools to make pasta at home yet. It's something that's on my list of things to do. And I have gone down to the farmer's market and bought fresh pasta there. Anytime I can get fresh or make it myself, like that is definitely the way. But I'm curious, what do you do with your pasta to get it to taste so good?
So I have not made it by hand ever, but I have bought fresh pasta. So talking more about the execution of it all than the creation
Okay.
to clear. I've always wanted, so my favorite is gnocchi, and I've always wanted to make gnocchi. And there's a beautiful love scene in Godfather 3 of her making gnocchi. For me, it's been many things. So I've started since I was in college. I was in a group of people in art history majors, and some were art majors actually. We would have dinners, I think once or twice a week, where we were studying, make these very elaborate dinners with pasta base. And so I learned how to make very good pasta in my early 20s. And because I was also feeding myself, who was very picky about pasta, and one of the people in the group was actually Sicilian descent too, and he was super picky. So I felt like I had to really work hard at this. There's so many like tricks of boiling, the way you boil it, how fast you boil it, what you do with the boil. For me, this could be, there's many different ways of doing it. There's the whole idea of what type of pasta is it, right? So it takes a little bit of time to figure out if you haven't worked with a certain pasta, like how it cooks. But to study how it cooks, I don't leave the pot ever. Any pasta, especially fresh pasta. Fresh pasta is trickier because it takes 2 to 3 minutes to cook sometimes. Like you have to high boil sometimes on some of them, like all this stuff. So those can be a lot trickier. Even boxed pasta is like 12 minutes at the most, right? I don't even know what would be 12 minutes, maybe a lasagna pasta. But basically, you try to go as more al dente you can because it's going to cook no matter what. So I feel like I've tried to perfect the idea of al dente, of the real definition, so that it sticks a little to that tooth. That's like a perfect pasta. But I've also spent many years enjoying it. I think you have to really like to eat pasta to make good pasta. Like I feel like there's people who like might not like it as much, and I feel like then they're gonna make it al dente or whatever. I feel like it just matters as far as you want it to be a perfect pasta. Because you can have like just butter and salt and pepper, no sauce, right? If you make that pasta perfect, whether it's by hand, whether it's in a box, you just execute it perfectly, whatever the case may be, it could be in a phenomenal dish.
I guess one thing that you said is different pastas require different cooking times. And even though I typically get like boxed pasta or however way they package it, I typically almost always make it for the same amount of time and never really think to consider, does this need more or less time compared to like a different kind? So that's something that I want to pay attention to next time. And two things that I feel like that has helped me to elevate my pasta game is I have this book, Salt, Fat, Acid, and Heat.
Yeah.
And I would always salt my water, but like the way she describes it in the book, your water needs to taste like the saltiest ocean out there. And I'm like, okay, so don't just put like little grabs of salt, scoop it with your hand and taste it to make sure it is super salty. So I started doing that. And I'm like, okay, this is like way salty, but hey, I have seen it transform the way the pasta comes out. And then if I'm making, let's say, a pasta with a cream based sauce, something else that I learned that was a really neat trick from that book was if you're working with heavy cream, you want to put it in a saucepan on low heat and just let it cook on low for 15 minutes, occasionally stirring. And then from there, start to build it, add your butter, Parmesan. And I kid you not, I feel like I have made the best cream sauce yet. There's room for improvement, but just knowing that small trick, and it wasn't about what I add into it, but just how I cook it, blew my mind.
Cream sauces are hard, and I actually shy away because my mom, being French, knows them very well. And I feel like every dish she makes has an amazing cream sauce almost. I shy away from it because I get very nervous about it. I've ruined many cream dishes. It's really nice when you start cooking and you realize, like you said, it's not so much about the ingredients. A lot of times it's how you've actually made it or prepared it or executed it. All these things have this natural taste to them if you cook it well, right? Or if you do it like accurately. So I feel like that enhances the actual natural flavor of things too, is when they're cooked to perfection.
I know we talked about it as it relates to baking, but there's also a science to cooking as well. And once you understand these different components, the smallest changes really yield the tastiest results in this case.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm actually jealous a lot of people who go to culinary schools because I feel like, regardless if you think that's necessary or not, I will say they learn all these tricks. My cousin went for a year and she went to CIA up in Hudson Valley. And so she came back and she has all these tricks. And I was like, that's enough. Who cares if you take this into some career? You know how to do all these like tricks that make everything taste good. One of the dishes that I gave you a recipe of, but it's like this trick where like using parchment paper for transferring the dough into the quiche. She taught me this really easy thing. She goes, "Oh yeah, in like cooking school we did this." And I was like, "What?" So just like small little things that, can just enhance the whole dish and make everything efficient or easier, tastier. It could be like a simple thing, like you just said, like heating up the cream first. That's all. Yeah. You're like, wait, what?
It's mind-blowing stuff, and I love that. Sometimes these things that maybe we don't even think about at all, it's just one little change will just change the whole thing for you.
And as my mom would say, she'd say, when you make the cream sauce next time, I guess it depends on the dish, she'll sprinkle a little nutmeg in it.
I'm gonna try it.
Yeah.
I will try it.
I'm telling you, nutmeg goes a long way in France. Lots of cream sauces.
So now I want to dive into the way you gather around food. I'm curious to know, what role does food play in how you connect with people, whether it's family, friends, or community?
Oh, it's huge. It's always been big. I think a lot of cultures do this too, actually, where food was a huge thing at my grandmother's house in New York. As a kid, I remember the table being bigger than like the room itself. And I look at pictures, I'm like, oh, it's actually not that big. But to me, everything, it was so important and everything around it was so important. All the people. It's always been a huge part of me. My mom's side, the French will spend hours in their lunches, maybe 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. That's the biggest meal of the day. And remembering that as a kid, being so excited, like even their school system, my cousins when they're younger would come home for 2 hours for lunch because you're supposed to have this big lunch with your family. There's this extended family too. So to me, it's always been a very big moment. And then when I met my husband, who's Northern Italian descent, his dad also loved cooking too. And he would always have people around his table. And so actually the best example of this was like for my wedding, the food was the biggest thing. So I actually spent the least amount of money on everything else because I wanted my highest part of the budget to be food. This is like the only time in my life I'm having this humongous party of like how many, 180 people going to share what I love. And to me, it was food. I would love to have been a guest at my wedding, but I feel like I had so many layers. After all the amazing dishes, I had a cheese board sent out to all the tables. My father-in-law, this is a cute communal thing he does after dinner at his house, whether it was fancy or not fancy, he would come around with fruit while you're all sitting at the table still. He cuts the fruit and he serves it to you. Fruit was always like a big thing after their dinner. So I combined the two. Every table after you were done eating would get cheese board and all this fruit cut that you would pass around. And to me, those were like emblems. You're sharing something, you're cutting something and sharing, and you're talking. And it's a moment of communal experiences. My husband would always make me these amazing little berry smoothies when we first dated. So I had little tiny chaser, like berry smoothies with little straws in them that everyone got at the very end, after the cake, after the Italian cookies, after the fruit, after everything. So every part of that dinner, a moment that was very mindful and super deliberate of what my intentions were. And because to me, that is one of the highest communal areas around a table at a wedding with new friends, family, old friends. There's just so many levels of ages. There's only so many times you get to do something like that. I think that is a really good representation of what my idea of like food and gathering. But even like on a weekday, I have two friends from that we love going out and we love checking out new restaurants, and we'll do that and we'll just spend hours for just talking with wine and food. And to me, that's one of the best parts of food and wine, is being able to celebrate it with someone else.
Snapping to that, I actually really admire hearing your wedding story and the intentionality, how huge it played its part when it comes to serving your guests. And one thing I've noticed about me when it comes to food in general, I do not flinch about how much I want to spend. If the money's there, I don't mind. There are other people who they'd rather get them something more material or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with it. But I just think it's so interesting that my preference really is in relation to food. I would rather have a nice food experience than splurge on something else. Spending on food just makes it worth it.
I hear you. I agree. I think it's a very big priority of mine as well as far as like budgeting things. I'm like, we have to budget in food for sure.
I think this was maybe our second time meeting each other in person. It was over brunch. I know we met at Bodega. And funny backstory for those who are listening, Nicole and I actually met over LinkedIn.
So funny. I was like, how did we do that? I feel like I've known you forever.
We were attending like one of Vogue's like live events. Yeah. It just happened to be the perfect randomness because not only were we like living in the same area, but like we also had the same background in UX.
Yeah, it was like food, fashion, UX. I'm like, come on.
Because of you, I'll just take the moment right now to just say thank you, Nicole, because you were the first one to expose me to Kobe's and it is just so good.
I know, it really is.
We had brunch and that was honestly a really good brunch experience. And so I want to know from your perspective, what makes a great brunch experience for you?
That's a tough one. We talked about obviously food being a central figure. It's not so much with brunch. I think you and I were food driven, right? I think being food driven is a little funnier with me. There's something a little bit more relaxed and it's much more about socializing. I think it's also because it's a choice, right? So we don't have to have brunch and you can survive. This sounds crazy, but bear with me. But I think like with dinner, you pretty much should have dinner or else you'll feel like awful. You don't feel awful if you don't have brunch. You can have your breakfast or you can have lunch. So I think there's like some kind of uniqueness to that. I feel like it's a little indulgy, right? Because it's this kind of choice. I get excited just on that idea. A lot gets taken out of the factor for food. I do want like amazing, exceptional food, but I'm also really usually going with a group of friends. I like to dine by myself. It's weird. I like to sit at a bar, eat by myself, and talk to a bartender or whatever. It's always so fun because I also feel like I'm traveling and a food critic. I always think of these things. I'm like, okay, this is my past life. But with brunch, I don't brunch by myself. I think I have once. If it's a very socialized kind of concept, I go because I want to hear so and so because we need to catch up on the story that she just went on a date with someone and I want to find out all about it. It's usually more to the brunch or the place is very fun and I haven't been yet, so I want to see it. Ambiance is huge with brunches for me. It might go higher than a dinner because I have a higher expectation that this thing better blow me away. And if it's not the food, it better be like where we're sitting or the experience itself or whatever else it is. That's what I think of when I think of brunch. It's probably not what you want as an answer.
Hey, it's your answer. There is a lot of relatability in it. When I'm thinking about myself and hearing what you said, typically when you're brunching, it's meant as a social hangout with friends, besties, family too. The food does become almost secondary or like tertiary to the whole experience. It's like the vibe. Who am I going with? What are we talking about? We're catching up. And then, oh, the food's here and it's great. Amazing, which makes for the complete brunch experience. But I do resonate with that a little bit. The attention is elsewhere. Whereas if it is dinner, I'm finding myself looking up what is on the menu and judging my decision based off of what's on the menu and also what does the place look like.
Especially with the girls I was talking about. We'll go to brunch to catch up. We'll go to a specific place for dinner because we've looked up that place 1,000 times or we read a review or we done this or it's new and someone said it was really good. So we go. We're going for the food, even though we're going to catch up. But it's a little different with the brunch. We're still going for the place, but it's not always food specific. I feel like that's where it gets a little tricky with it being a whole bunch of other factors, at least for me too.
I love that. I have a little something extra for you. This is a segment that I like to call Off the Menu. It's a quick round of fun, unexpected food-related questions. We'll treat this first question like a warm-up because I think we already know the answer. Sweet or savory?
Savory.
The best meal you've ever had and where?
off the top of my head, only because it's the most recent. So this is in fairness that it happened 3 years ago. My husband and I went to Europe first time together. I wanted him to meet my family all over there. And I took him on a tour that my mom had given me as a kid, like different places. Every summer we would go visit her family. She would take me and my sister. She'd find like a little village, pocket city, whatever, all over France and take us and then show us the whole history of it. It was very cool. I took him to a place that's called Blois. Blois. It's known for being in the Loire Valley, which everyone knows is like wine central area. It has a very medieval castle where the Loire Valley is known for these really opulent places. We were looking for something, walked by this cobblestone street, cars could go through. It's like this balmy night. It was really nice and warm. And we're walking through and there were these tables outside. It looked very low key-ish, but it had a very cool font that I liked, that I thought was edgier. The color was like a red and a yellowish kind of color. So we were like, okay, let's try this. It was one of the best dishes. If we come back and that's Michelin, we would not be surprised. Like it was phenomenal. It was very reasonably priced and probably the most amazing high-end tasting food, I should say. Like in the sense of the sensory, I can barely tell you what we had. I have a picture of it so I don't forget. There was a salad, had some beets and some cheese, but like the way they created this dish, pesto, and it was phenomenal. And it's all these flavors, all these dishes we know of. It was perfect. We actually went to a Michelin starred restaurant on that same stay, and it was like the same. My husband liked the Michelin star one because of one dish more, but I actually feel like this place was hands down, like every dish was breathtaking, like amazing.
Wow. Would you rather over season or never season at all?
I'd rather over season.
What's in your fridge right now that you should probably throw away?
Oh, goodness. This is going to make me very Southern Californian, but probably like an Airwalk juice that I said I would drink all of, and I've only had a few sips of, and it's expired. That might be in there because that's been in there for a while. That's one of my biggest is buying juices and being very like, I'm gonna drink one every day.
Yeah.
And then I start and then I just don't finish that.
We touched on this a little bit, but maybe something else will come up. What's your go-to comfort meal after a long day?
If I don't have to make it, I would say lasagna. So every dish that I make has a person attached to it because I've gotten it from someone typically. Even if I go through a recipe, like list of recipes, it's inspired by someone who like made something. So this is my brother-in-law Daryl's lasagna dish that he introduced it to us. And then I love it. Maybe something like that. That's one of my favorite. Just being so excited to eat it. It's amazing.
I want to try it.
I love ricotta, and it has like Swiss chard and ricotta, thinly sliced zucchini. You roast it. The minute this one hit my palate, I was like, I only make this lasagna. You can make it with a meat sauce or a non-meat sauce. It's just so good. I'll eat it while I'm making it with my glass of wine, and sometimes get so full that I'm like, I don't know if I could eat this.
The snacking while cooking is definitely a real thing.
Exactly. Like somewhere where I've given my husband the dish and I'm like, I'm done because I ate it all in the kitchen while snacking.
You have 5 minutes to make a meal. What's on the plate?
I have 5 minutes to make a meal?
Yep. Or you have 5 minutes to figure out what you're going to make. What is it?
I'm not a quick fire chef like they do in Top Chef. I would die at this one. Okay, I know. All right, here we go. I love salmon from McCall's Butcher and Meats because they have a sushi grade salmon, so you can actually undercook it. It's fine. You won't die. Nothing bad will happen to you. So I would do that. I've had it as a sushi salmon, like a sashimi. If I'm doing 5 minutes, I would grate some cucumber and put in yogurt and put little spices in there so it's a little spicier, and then have that with the salmon. I'd probably quickly steam like some asparagus or broccoli, some green kind of veggie.
Yeah.
Do
Sounds
that maybe in
good.
under 5 minutes.
If your cooking style was a song, what would it be?
I'd have to say it's a mixture of classical Baroque music mixed with, I don't know, electronic corporation loungy music with like a Sia or Lana Del Rey, although they're very different, some female vocals, and then every now and then some, I don't know, like Wyclef Jean from Carnival or Mos Def, like a little like edgier beat to it. I'd have to be like DJing my own song into it.
I don't know, Nicole. I think you just inspired something, which is maybe there's an opportunity for Cheers and Chow to curate a cooking playlist inspired by the people we connect with.
That would be amazing. Love it.
Okay. One food you'd eat for the rest of your life.
I want to say like the healthy version or the non-healthy version.
Give us both.
Salmon I could have like every day, probably. And then pasta I could have every day. So I feel like if I need protein or just carbs the whole time.
Is there a food that you refuse to eat?
Avocado. I know. I'm a Southern Californian. Here's the thing with avocado. It's very funny. I don't like guacamole, I should say, because I'm not a fan of tomatoes or raw onions. With that in mind, I've had avocado in sushi rolls before, and as long as no one talks about that it's avocado, I'll eat it. If someone's like, oh, this is amazing, I will put the sushi piece down and be like, I'm done. I'm not eating this.
A weird food combo you secretly love. So it could be a weird food combo or something maybe that you've tried through experimentation or just free balling it that you didn't think would actually be something that you really enjoyed.
It's funny. It would freak me out if I did this, but when I smoked weed back in the day and had munchies, I feel like that's the equivalent I could come up with, which is funny because it's actually my dad's thing that he did. I'd come back from very late night with friends or something when I was like an older teenager, whatever, 20s. I remember he made it a couple times, and it's not weird. It's actually probably normal now, but it was like a waffle toasted with a vanilla ice cream inside. That was one. That's not even weird. I'm not a dessert person except for maybe if I'm like coming down from a high and I have munchies. And then the other one, I'd say I recently told someone I thought this was such a weird like munchie thing. And she's like, that's normal. So I felt like for me, it was a weird combo. And I used to love this. I definitely smoked some weed in high school. And this would be like my go-to snack. A bagel, cream cheese, and then a black currant jelly over. So it's like sweet, salty. And again, to someone, they're like, that's not that weird.
I think weird is one of those things that's like subjective to the individual, right? You think it's weird, but then other people are like, oh, no, that's not weird. It's like maybe they just have interesting food preferences.
I could try to think of some more. Here's the other thing too with me. I've been a child who was very picky eater, and I didn't like combining food too much.
Growing up as a kid, your food couldn't touch each other. It was fine if they were like touching.
So interestingly enough, I was, but different cultures catered to more touching of food, I realized. So if I was having, for instance, like any type of Chinese takeout food, they're like the best creators of combined food sources. So I don't know if it was also because they were presenting them as blended foods. I didn't think about it as a picky kid. The minute it was like my mom making something, I would have the little divided plate. I had it far too long in age-wise, so did not like things touching certain things. So it depends. In pasta dishes, things touch all together, right? A lot of combined dishes that I would always be so excited about as a kid that I didn't have to like separate anything to.
Amazing. Nicole, this has been such a very fun conversation with you. I'm really glad that I got a chance to explore your cooking style, dive a little bit deeper into your culture, your history with food, and it's amazing. I know everyone listening here today is definitely inspired by the things that you shared.
Thanks so much for having me, and I'm so excited about you actually doing this and it represents and all that it's for, because I feel like you're really focusing on this idea that food brings connection. So I love that that's like this underlining theme for all of this is amazing. So thank you.
We definitely appreciate having you here on the show. That's it for today's episode of Cheers and Chow. And if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Until next time, happy cooking and cheers.